On a hot summer day, an ant was searching for water. After walking around, it found a stream and tried to drink. But the ant slipped and fell into the water, struggling to stay afloat. A dove, sitting on a nearby tree, saw the ant in trouble. Feeling compassion, the dove plucked a leaf and dropped it into the water near the ant. The ant climbed onto the leaf and safely floated to the shore. Grateful, the ant thanked the dove for saving its life. Days later, a hunter came to the forest and aimed his arrow at the dove. The ant, seeing the danger, quickly crawled up the hunter's leg and bit him hard. Startled, the hunter missed his aim and the dove flew away to safety. This story teaches us the importance of helping others, as kindness often comes back when we least expect it.
Here's the story of the crow and the fox. One day, a crow found a delicious piece of cheese and perched on a branch to enjoy it. As she held the cheese in her beak, a sly fox passing by noticed her and devised a plan to get the cheese. The fox looked up and said, "Oh, crow, how beautiful you are. Your feathers are glossy and your eyes are so bright.
Wow.
You must have the sweetest voice in the forest. Please, won't you sing a song for me?" Flattered by the fox's words, the crow opened her beak to sing, and the cheese fell to the ground. The fox quickly grabbed it and laughed. "Thank you for the cheese, dear crow," he said, "but remember, never trust flattery." Moral: be cautious of flattery, as it can lead to foolish decisions.
Here's the story of the lion and the mouse. Once upon a time, in a dense jungle, a mighty lion lay resting under the shade of a large tree. He had just finished a hearty meal and was enjoying his nap, when suddenly, a tiny mouse ran across his nose. The lion woke up with a start and immediately caught the little creature under his massive paw. "How dare you disturb my sleep?" the lion roared, his golden mane shimmering under the sunlight. The poor mouse trembled with fear and pleaded, "Oh, mighty lion, please forgive me. I didn't mean to bother you. If you let me go, I promise that one day I'll repay your kindness." The lion laughed loudly, his roar echoing through the jungle. "You, a tiny creature like you. That's impossible, but since you've amused me with your bravery, I'll let you go." He released the mouse and watched as it scurried away into the bushes. Days passed, and the lion continued his reign as the king of the jungle. But one day, as he was wandering through the forest, he stepped into a trap set by hunters. A large net fell over him, and no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't free himself. His mighty roars echoed through the jungle as he called for help. The little mouse, busy gathering food nearby, heard the lion's cries. Remembering the lion's earlier kindness, it rushed to the scene. Seeing the great lion trapped, the mouse said, "Don't worry, my friend, I'll help you." The mouse began gnawing at the thick ropes with its sharp teeth. Slowly but steadily, the ropes began to break. After much effort, the net finally fell apart, and the lion was free. He stood up, shaking the remnants of the trap from his mane. The lion looked at the tiny mouse with deep gratitude. "You saved my life, little one. I never thought someone as small as you could help someone as mighty as me. You've taught me an important lesson. No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." The mouse smiled and replied, "Even the smallest creature can make a big difference, Your Majesty." From that day on, the lion and the mouse became the best of friends, proving that kindness and friendship can bridge even the greatest of differences. Morale: always be kind and never underestimate anyone, no matter how small or insignificant they may seem.
Hansel and Gretel were so aghast at what they had just heard. They had never imagined that their stepmother would be this cruel. The poor woodcutter and his family lived at the edge of a large forest. The unfortunate children worked hard the whole day for their stepmother, and still she gave them no food as she wanted to have it all. It was this night that the woodcutter's wife ordered her husband to leave his kids in the deep forest, as there wasn't enough food for everyone. Though the kids felt so scared to hear this conversation, but they were smart. They made a plan and went out to fill their pockets with shiny stones. Hansel and Gretel were determined not to let their stepmother's cruel plan succeed. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Hansel quietly slipped out of the house. Under the moonlight, he gathered as many shiny stones as he could find, filling his pockets. Then he returned to bed, whispering to Gretel, "Don't worry, I have a plan." The next morning, their stepmother woke them early. "Get up, you lazy children. We're going into the forest to gather wood," she said, a wicked glint in her eyes. The woodcutter, their father, looked downcast, knowing what was to come but too fearful of his wife to resist. Hansel and Gretel said nothing but followed obediently. As they walked deeper into the woods, Hansel dropped the shiny stones one by one behind them, leaving a trail. After several hours of walking, their stepmother led them to a clearing. "Stay here and rest while we collect wood," she said coldly. "We'll come back for you." The children sat quietly as their father and stepmother disappeared into the forest, but they knew the truth. The day grew long and no one returned for them. As night fell, Gretel began to cry, but Hansel reassured her. "Don't worry, Gretel, the moon will guide us home." When the moon rose high in the sky, its light reflected off the stones Hansel had dropped. Hand in hand, they followed the sparkling path all the way back to their house. Their stepmother was furious when she saw them the next morning, but she hid her anger behind a forced smile. "How fortunate you found your way home," she said through gritted teeth. A few days later, the stepmother tried again. This time, she locked the door to prevent Hansel from collecting stones. But Hansel was clever once more. As they walked deeper into the forest, he crumbled the bread their stepmother had given them for lunch and left a trail of crumbs behind. Once again, they were abandoned in the forest, and as night fell, Gretel sobbed. "Hansel, what will we do now? We have no stones to guide us home." Hansel comforted her. "I left a trail of breadcrumbs. We can follow them." But when they looked for the crumbs, they found none. The birds of the forest had eaten every last bit. The children were truly lost now, wandering through the forest for days, hungry and cold. Just as they began to lose hope, they stumbled upon a small cottage in the middle of the woods. To their astonishment, the house was made entirely of gingerbread, with windows of sugar and a roof covered in candy. Overcome by hunger, the children rushed to the house and began breaking off pieces to eat. As they did, the door creaked open and an old woman stepped out. "Who's nibbling at my house?" she asked in a sweet, raspy voice. Seeing the thin, tired children, she smiled kindly. "Oh, you poor dears. Come inside and rest. I'll give you all the food you could want." Grateful and unsuspecting, Hansel and Gretel followed her inside, but they soon realized their mistake. The old woman was a wicked witch who lured children to her house to eat them. She locked Hansel in a cage and forced Gretel to cook and clean for her. Every day the witch would check on Hansel, wanting to fatten him up. "Stick out your finger so I can see if you're plump enough to eat," she would say. But clever Hansel held out a bone instead, tricking the nearsighted witch into thinking he was still too thin. Frustrated by how long it was taking to fatten Hansel, the witch decided she would eat him anyway. "Gretel, heat the oven," she ordered one day. "We're baking bread and tomorrow I will eat your brother." Gretel, terrified, pretended not to understand. "How do I light the oven?" she asked. "Foolish girl," the witch snapped. "Let me show you." She bent down to look into the oven, and quick-thinking Gretel shoved her inside, slamming the door shut. The witch screamed, but Gretel didn't hesitate. She freed Hansel from the cage, and together they searched the witch's house. They found chests of gold and jewels, far more valuable than any food.